afternoon. I'm Bob Lynchide, President and CEO of the Chamber, and it's great to have our friends from SPUR here today, notwithstanding President and CEO Gabriel Metcalf, and we'll introduce him shortly. What I'd like to do first, once the sirens let out, is we'll do self-introductions so that everybody knows who's in the room, so that Gabe knows who's in the room, and then I'll do a brief introduction for Gabe. It's great to see the attendance today, and I want to mention that today's sponsor, I'm assuming, is Safeway and Halo Fine Confections, which it's nice to see Jack here too.
Thank you.
So let's start here, and we'll work our way around the room with self-introductions, your name, and the organization you represent.
I'm Robert Avila. I work.
We're pleased to have you here. Hopefully you all received a copy of the Agenda for Change for SPUR. And in addition, there's also a sheet, which is a matrix, that is the Chamber's public policy agenda that will show a lot of our collaboration and work that we do with SPUR and other organizations as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce a friend who has worked in this community for a number of years. Gabriel Metcalf is the President and CEO of the SPUR, and SPUR is a think tank organization that whose mission is good government and through good planning. And the SPUR organization has grown dramatically under Gabe's leadership, not only forging a new relationship in the South Bay and San Jose, but also recently announced at the Silver SPUR event this year their growth into Oakland. So please help me welcome our good friend Gabe Metcalf.
Thank you. Well, what a pleasure to be here. And can you hear me in the back?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. If you can't, just raise a hand or whatever. Yeah, no, I can go. Well, I got tired of going to cocktail parties, and they'd say, "What do you do?" And I'd say, "I work for SPUR," and everybody would say, "What's that?" So we wrote this to answer the question, "What is SPUR?" And what it specifically is it tries to answer the question, what is it that you're trying to get done at SPUR? That's what we tried to do. So it's sort of like a manifesto, and we sent it out last year, and it's sort of a summary of the big picture. So what I was going to do today is I'm going to spend a minute, for those of you who don't know, I'll tell you what SPUR is, and then I'm going to kind of walk through item by item really quickly, lay out what we are focused on at SPUR, and I'll move through this presentation very quickly and get into a discussion. Really pleased to be here. Of course, the Chamber is one of our biggest allies, and I'm going to go study this, public policy priorities, too. But I think it's fair to say, while we don't agree on everything, we agree on almost everything. And it's been, it's a good time in the city, right? It's a good time to get a lot of things done. And so we have some huge problems at the same time that are going to need us. So let's do that. Am I, just by the way, being videotaped, is this? All right, so we are located at the Urban Center down at 3rd and Mission, and basically the core of what we do is we figure out what to do about urban policy problems. So we run all these committees and task forces. Those result in reports on topics like climate change. This is how to regrow the middle class in the Bay Area. A report we put out last year on downtown San Jose. We also do events. Last year we did 250 panel discussions, tours. We do exhibits. This is from Unbuilt San Francisco. Right now we've got this great model of the planned development in downtown you guys can come and look at. We also advocate for change. This is my deputy director debating then board president Teskin. We do a lot of technical assistance, usually for public agencies. We've relied very heavily on volunteers, including some of you. Thank you. And have a membership. One of the big differences between SPUR and the Chamber is that our membership is not just businesses. It's also, we have about 5,000 individual members. So we have business and individual both. And this is kind of going to be the structure of what I'll walk through now. But we organize our work into 7 program areas: regional planning, community planning, housing, transportation, economic development, sustainable development, and good government. And the SPUR's agenda for change is organized into these areas, and that's what I'll walk through now. So we start with the regional lens, and boiling it down, what we are trying to do is concentrate growth inside existing cities. And what I've tried to do is for each of these areas, kind of boil it down to right now, this year, the next couple of years, what are we really working on? What are we really focused on inside each of these areas? The regional lens informs a lot for us. We are fortunate enough to live in a region that has a strong economy and is adding jobs. I think almost any region in the world would kill to be in our shoes in terms of the economic strength, but it creates a question, it creates a problem for us to solve, which is where does the growth go? Where do the jobs go? Where do the people go? There's a seat up here, Alex Clemens, if you want to.
You want it? All right. Call it right.
And so we are this year, I don't know how many of you know this, but for the first time since 1970, the Bay Area adopted a regional plan last year called Plan Bay Area, mandated by state law. And the only thing is it's not binding. It's just for yucks. So on the one hand, SB 375, Senate Bill 375, requires every region in California to have a regional plan. On the other hand, they weren't actually going to usurp local control over land use by doing what Oregon does or Washington does and making the regional growth plan binding on local zoning. So it is there. Implementation happens at the local level if cities feel like it. And so this is kind of a lens that we are using to look at a lot of the planning issues we face. So it's a big focus for us. Number 2, support the other 2 central cities of the Bay Area, San Jose and Oakland, to be successful. Within our regional program, this is our new effort. Oakland launched last week. And so we are really in the learning curve there. But you know, we have, while San Francisco is the center, the historic center, the center of the transit network, we do have a multi-centered regional forum. And so we believe that on most issues, there is common ground between the 3 cities. And our hope is that we can begin to define somewhat of a shared urban agenda for the central cities of the Bay Area. And then finally, we think the single best place to concentrate regional growth is around the BART and Caltrain stations. And so we're doing a lot of work both with those transit operators and with the cities to make transit-oriented development happen. Okay, number 2, community planning. And here's the goal, if you really boil it down: build great neighborhoods. Our priorities right now: get Trans Bay across the finish line, make the Central Soma plan turn out well, and start a new neighborhood plan. So those of you who have been following land use in San Francisco know we just finished, over the last 15 years, a kind of extraordinary round of neighborhood planning. We rezoned Trans Bay, Rincon Hill, Market Octavia, the Mission, the Central Waterfront. At one point we had 12 neighborhood rezonings underway simultaneously. Right now we have one, which is the Central Soma Plan. I don't know who would know this, maybe you, Alex. It will finish in a year-ish.
First, second quarter.
It'll finish first or second quarter of 2016. The Central Soma, I should have put in a map, but it's the area kind of between Mission and Caltrain in the south of Market. It's a pretty small area. We're starting to think there's a problem that given that we can't do a neighborhood plan in San Francisco in less than 12 to 15 years, in some cases much longer, honestly, we better get started because the mayor after the next mayor is not going to have any ribbon cuttings to preside over. Willie Brown started the rezoning efforts that are allowing the building that we see around us today. About 75% of the development happening in the city is in one of the plan areas that was recently rezoned. If we don't start some new planning now, we will not have anything else opening up. So we're very focused on these kind of, Trans Bay, the rezoning was done, but it's got some trouble. We can talk about that if you want. This is the only one that's coming up, so it needs to turn out well. But then, where will the next neighborhood plan be? Okay, housing. So this is the talk on everyone's lips for the last many years. It is the biggest problem we're facing as a city, how expensive it is. I'm sorry, we're not good at math at SPUR. No, actually we are really good at math. We're not good at PowerPoint formatting though. We have a lot of things we're doing in housing, but 5 strategies. Yeah, they're all number 1, they're tied. This year, we want to try to pass another affordable housing measure. Might be a bond, might be something else. We want to reinvest in the public housing stock. That means Hope SF is the name of the program. We want that to move forward in some significant ways this year. Number 3, experiment with unsubsidized middle-income housing. This is what everyone wishes is going to happen. Can't we just have more middle-income housing? That's what everyone says. The thing is, it's kind of a unicorn. It does not exist. Middle-income housing that is not subsidized. Any ideas on how to create unsubsidized middle-income housing are just that. They are ideas. They're theories people have. There is no program that can be ramped up that we know will work. That does not mean we shouldn't try. What it means is we should be humble about this one and recognize that we are talking about experimenting. We're talking about launching a wave of approaches that are not proven. So it's all the more reason to get started, and there are dozens of ideas, but they are, this is not one of these things where you can just jump up and down and make it happen. Fix the process. So we spend a lot of time on this. Why does it take years and years and years to get approval to build new housing? In many ways, this is the root of the problem. We have made it impossible to add housing supply. It is obvious that if you have growing demand to live here, but you're not adding to the supply, the prices will go up. So this is kind of wonky, kind of boring. This turns into 50 little micro changes that together would add up to something, and then finally upzone. You have to create more capacity for more housing supply, 250,000. Do you want to help 1,000 families? Do you want to help 100,000 families? Do you want to? How many families do you want to help? And then that's the number. That's how much subsidy we have to come up with. We spend more in San Francisco per capita than any other city in America, so it's something to be really proud of. We could do more. We're a very wealthy city. The reality is most of the people who need the help will never get an affordable unit. So we have to also fix the housing market. That's our premise. Okay, number 4, transportation. give people better ways to get where they need to go. Sorry about the numbering. These are all number one. We have a lot of priorities. So we had a big victory in November. We passed a GO bond for transportation. That's part of a 3-part plan. The other 2 parts are a local vehicle license fee and an additional local 1/2-cent sales tax for transportation. That's the mayor's plan. We are supportive. Much more important, frankly, than the GO bond. Those 2 measures will bring in more money. Number 2, extend Caltrain to the Transbay Terminal and electrify it. That's not going to happen this year, but we need to make some decisions about it this year. This is, in our opinion, the top transit capital project in the Bay Area. It will cement it's just for the kind of Silicon Valley corridor of Santa Clara, San Mateo, San Francisco counties. It will really, really make it possible to get people out of their cars when we get this last bit done, which is very important. We're going to come out with a big proposal in about 2 months to help make the 27 different transit operators in the Bay Area function more like one integrated system from the customer's perspective. It's one of the big barriers of why people who currently don't ride transit, what we have to overcome to get them to start riding transit. Most people in the Bay Area do not know the name of the transit operator. They're mostly very small. And so we have a very tough brand awareness problem here and legibility problem because there are so many transit operators. So potentially a big win there. Better Market Street. A decision should be made this year about which option. Very important. Many, not most of the Muni lines, many if not most of the bicycle lanes funnel onto Market Street. They're working on a plan. The funding is basically available because of the GO bond. Will have huge benefits across the entire city. Complete the bike network. Begin work on the next part 2. Finally, some serious discussion about that. I know I'm going through this really fast. I'm kind of just trying to sketch out the canvas, and then we can come back and talk about it. So economic development. Lay the foundations of economic prosperity for everyone. All right, this year, figure out what we're doing about the Prop M growth cap. Reinvent the workforce system, and last, don't do anything stupid. What do I mean by that? We are creating jobs. We're the top city in the country last year for our job creation. We did a lot of things right that some of them over many years. We made decisions back in the early 70s to embrace a compact, walkable downtown. We got BART built. We adopted the Transit First policy. We did all of those things decades ago that took a while to play out. We now have arguably the best downtown in America. It is walkable. You know, you can get to lunch with all these people without having to take your car out of the garage, right? It's that just sort of functionality of the physical planning. During the recession, we got rid of one of the biggest problems that has been with us for a long time. We got rid of the payroll tax. We've just done all these things right. We also got super lucky. Silicon Valley saved our bacon. And the question is, I mean, this last one, I think a lot about this, about all the various ways we could mess it up. And so I think that's one thing that the chamber needs to really keep its eye out for. This workforce system is harder. But here's sort of the idea. We have the luxury of being in a region with a lot of jobs. Very different from if we were in Kansas City or Detroit or many, many parts of the country. But there's still poverty. So the problem is, how do you connect more people to the economy? So it's about upskilling, and it's about helping people have better networks of relationships to get jobs. it's much more about focusing on the human capital side, because in some ways, we have the luxury of taking for granted that the jobs exist. So the problem should be more solvable here than it is in a place like Kansas City or Detroit. I think the building trades is a really interesting example of something that's working the right way. They have this apprentice system, and it means something. If you're a journeyman carpenter, the contractors know what that means. They know what skills you have. They're happy to hire you. We need to kind of invent that same model for a lot of other professions, where there's a ladder of advancement that is available for working class people, that they can get skills and get better jobs. So a lot of work going on this. We already spent tens of millions of dollars on this, but it's not working as well as it could. All right, sustainable development, reduce our ecological footprint and prepare for climate change. We're doing a big project right now called Fossil-Free Bay Area. We're going to try to come up with a roadmap for how the 9 counties could function without using fossil fuels. We believe that given our wealth, given our education levels, if we can't do it here, we can't do it anywhere. So we're going to try to figure out what that strategy would look like. We're doing a lot of work on sea level rise. The first big project for us was Ocean Beach. We did a big master plan on contract for the National Park Service. But guess what the lowest lying area of San Francisco is? Anybody know this? Mission Creek. Mission Bay. It's going to be a lot sooner than anyone thinks that some of the impacts of sea level rise begin to hit. So we are right now doing this really cool project with the Dutch government and the port to figure out a strategy for Mission Creek and Mission Bay. A lot of work with the SFPUC on how we handle rain that falls in San Francisco. And then we're doing a lot of work on the regional food system that is not so, that's more regional, not so centered in San Francisco, obviously. But last, good government. So I would say our big focus is using the boom to upgrade our infrastructure. Kind of not getting too used to it, right? And I'm sure many of you have the same dilemma in your businesses or in your personal life. We know this boom isn't going to last, because they never do, but can we use it? And at the level of kind of fiscal policy for city government, what that boils down to is not ramping up the staffing as if it were going to be going on forever. Grabbing as much of that money as we can to actually physically upgrade our infrastructure. We are decades behind. This is, in some ways, the approach you see Jerry Brown taking with the state budget. We were really, frankly, quite thrilled at a lot of the moves he's making. So I'm trying to apply that kind of fiscal discipline to the city of San Francisco. We're doing work on contracting, on the permitting process. This is cut off the sentence, I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was. With that, I'll close. Thank you for having me. We have time for discussion, right? Yeah, yeah, okay. All right, who first? Bring back the payroll tax. I see people talking about doing that. I think that would be probably the worst thing we could do. We could not, well, shooting ourselves in the foot. The big thing we're doing now is this Prop M growth cap. We are about to cause a massive, massive spike in rents. Prop M from the mid-'80s caps how much office space we can add each year in the city. So so we're not allowing people to build office space in the face of the growing economy, and that is going to result in huge increases in the cost of office space, which will cause huge displacement from the city. it is really shooting ourselves in the foot.
Regarding property, has there been any conversation about the conversion of office space to housing and moving that from the population?
Yeah, so the question was, there's an idea out there about about buildings that used to be office that have been converted to housing. There's one on Van Ness, just north of Market, the old AAA building that is now being converted to housing.
There's a number downtown.
So a bunch of buildings. There is an idea that City Hall is working on right now in a trade, where basically they bring a couple million square feet of office space that has been converted back into the allowable cap, how much new space could be built, in exchange for increasing the fees that new office development pays for affordable housing. So if, in theory, that sounds reasonable to both sides. And the devil is in the details. The details are not worked out. The mayor is personally trying to cut that deal. So I'm optimistic that would buy us some time. I think one of the questions, and I wonder what you guys know about this, is whether Prop M could ever be reformed at the ballot. Dig or fix. And I don't think we know the answer yet. All right. What else?
We're a small city, 49 square miles or less, surrounded water on three sides. You see those charts about rent and housing prices, and we're always above New York City. But that's because New York City is 8 million people spread around a bunch of boroughs with a very wide type of housing stock. I mean, there's 60% home ownership and we're 60% rent. I mean, it's like comparing Manhattan to San Francisco rather than all of New York City. Can we get to the point where we're looking at housing development and housing costs regionally? Because as long as San Francisco remains an attractive place for people to come and live and work, it's always going to be expensive because you can't build other than some infill high-rises.
Yeah, it's a good point. Could you hear that in the back? Yeah. We really struggle with this, right? We're planners, so we're making maps all the time and crunching the numbers on housing costs. And so what's the right geography to show when you compare? There's no one right answer. I would just say this: we know it's really expensive. We know a lot of middle-class people who made the decision to make their lives here are not able to now. That they're having to make a decision to move somewhere else. So
but the point in New York is, if you can't afford Manhattan, you're still living in New York City.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was going to say.
That's not the situation you're geographically.
So this is our dilemma. The New York solution is you have good transit to cheaper housing. And it's not necessarily suburbs. It's good transit to walkable urban neighborhoods in the Bronx or in Newark or in Philadelphia. And it doesn't matter what state it's in, but you can be part of the New York economy. The Bay Area wasn't built that way, so this is a bigger problem than just how we crunch the numbers to present the problem. This is about needing to build more walkable urban neighborhoods in the region so there are more good options for people. So it's a very long-term play. In the long run, though, Jim, that's our only hope. We have to build more of what people want.
Does that play into your regional coordinating agency for the user of transit, where they're seeing one map that's really showing them Caltrain and Uni and AC Transit?
Yeah, so in New York, over 100 years, they merged and consolidated and amalgamated so that the New York MTA kind of owns and operates most of the transit. That might happen here and there in the Bay Area, but our theory is that we can kind of make it look that way and act that way, regardless of who owns the pieces of transit. I think that would help. It is part of the solution.
A fare structure that recognizes go
Yeah,
into.
yeah, a fair structure, you know, when we talk about a fair structure that doesn't penalize transfers, we're also talking about less operating revenue to the operators. So we probably have to fix the regional fare structure at the point of a new funding measure, like the next Bay Bridge toll, to help pay for it. But yes, very important. Yeah.
Where would you like to see the new BART tunnel?
Well, I'd like to see it go under Alex's house at Alameda. But not right under, just next to it. It's premature. They are studying several alignments. I don't know the answer on the best one. They're doing what's called the core capacity study right now to try to pick that. And in my professional life, I've never seen it be this real. There's this much traction. Yeah, I'm feeling quite optimistic.
How far away are we talking? 5 years, 10?
20. Before you're riding it? Yeah, 20. I'd like to, I should say 10, because it sounds more relevant, but for being realistic, yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how much attention is being spent in the regional planning of transportation on the transfer points and the access to the head of the transportation, like BART? It seems to me that's where the inefficiency is built.
Say, what do you mean? What's the head of the?
Well, take for example, the station, you still got to get to the station. Here in San Francisco, you walk to Uni, but you have to transfer to get from one part to another. Those two issues. The inefficiency of getting to work.
Yeah, well, so there's this great irony. BART was really conceived of in the 1950s, but it didn't open until 1974. And during the kind of 20 years between when the people started working on it really seriously and when it opened, this kind of sea change in the Bay Area culture happened. And used to be that every mayor and every city council welcomed growth. This is the American way. But by the time BART opened, it opened to this wave of downzonings around every station outside of downtown San Francisco and downtown Oakland. Every station.
That's where the problem was.
And so we really built the Bay Area the wrong way. We didn't take advantage of BART. We didn't cluster the development around BART. So people now have a very tough time getting to the stations. That said, BART is full.
Even so, yeah.
Even so. And so you talk to BART about things to do to grow ridership, and they say, no, 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 please. The next rider costs us $30 billion because we have to build a tube and everything. And so it's, they're actually, in spite of all the wrong land use decisions, we have to add capacity. Yeah, Ken?
Gabe, in your pursuit of good government, has SPUR ever considered reforming Prop J?
Which J?
Prop J, which is the proposition that restricts contracting out to the private sector by city
Yes,
government.
many times. And we've never won. So basically,
maybe now's the time.
Prop J is the city ordinance governing the process of government contracting out. And you know, our view is essentially that as long as workers are being treated fairly and being paid a good wage, we should be indifferent about whether they are on the payroll or whether you're hiring a firm to do it for you, and you should pick who's going to do the best job for the best price. And that view has not prevailed thus far. Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes the development of walkable new housing that's for low-income people pushes the really poor people further out into the suburbs, creating a new phenomenon of suburban poverty.
Yes.
Do you guys think about that?
Yes, we worry about this a lot. You see this all over the country. That, I mean, there's this. So there's really been a change in metropolitan form, right? After World War II, every city, New York, San Francisco, it's international, London, lost population, decade after decade. But then, sometime in the mid-1970s, it reversed. First in New York and San Francisco, and then Boston, Washington, Seattle, and they all started gaining population again. So you have this reversal now where the people with more choice want to live in walkable urban neighborhoods. So in a competition, people with more money always win, right? And so the people with less money are now forced to the periphery. So this is the new urban form in America. Rich people in the middle, poor people at the edge. And yeah, you see, I mean, as white people, as white hipsters are displaced from the Mission and they go to Oakland, the African-American population has to go out to Vallejo and Stockton. And so it's very worrisome. Yeah.
But when thinking about the regional plans, are you thinking about those peripheral areas and infrastructure?
Yeah, I would say our plan A is that the places in the core with good transit and good infrastructure should accept more growth than they have thus far and allow more people to remain in the center. And so we're quite focused on that. We are not as an organization doing planning work in Martinez or Stockton. And I wish somebody was, because they do need it. Yeah.
So yeah, as you advocate for building more density around transit and these more walkable neighborhoods, are you also advocating for more services for some of these neighborhoods? Because they, with more density, there's more people, and it creates, a need for more police or DPW services or even better signage to help people get around. Are you doing any of that, or is that really up to the individual neighborhoods like Union Square or downtown to be doing that?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on where you're talking about. There are lots of neighborhoods where, and I'd say, Upper Market is a great example. Adding new housing, above ground floor retail, doesn't need more sewer capacity or more transit capacity because it's taking advantage of what's already there. A lot of the basic services of cops and firefighters, city revenue is going up because they're paying taxes, and so we can grow services. In other cases, I don't know, there's a big development going on in India Basin now, 1,000 units being planned. And it's really more like a new neighborhood, more like a Mission Bay. And there you have to be much more intentional about adding schools or police stations. So it kind of depends. Yeah. Yeah, Bob.
So how do you argue with somebody who would say, instead of building offices, shouldn't we build more housing in those sites? If the supply of land is limited and it's finite, I mean, I'm not saying that I believe that, but how do you actually deal with that argument? I think that's probably something that would come up to some of these anti-growth advocates who would say that we should be putting housing wherever we have available land.
I think mostly we should be putting housing up. There's only one place where it really makes sense to maybe reserve for office, which is the areas right next to downtown. And I think basically I would say, yeah, I would concede the argument. Mostly our priority should be housing. But if we let the area right next to downtown go to residential, then we can never, ever, for all time, add jobs to the city. And so I would make an exception for there. There's just so many benefits to keeping downtown contiguous and walkable rather than letting jobs sprawl over the region. Yeah.
I know you've been involved with SPUR for a long time.
I know.
I've always been curious about that. You kind of have to tread kind of a fine line because you want to be relevant in working with all the parties. But once you start acting like you're Big Daddy knowing everything, then it kind of all, then it's like there's push back on that. Hey, so without giving up what your secret sauce is, how do you navigate that?
Well, thank you. Come see me for a drink for the next question. Well, no, let me just say, we are trying to be the big tent where a lot of different groups can come and be part of the conversation. And sometimes we live up to that better than others. And I was just going to say, we have a really diverse board. So it's got labor on it, it's got a lot of community groups, preservationists, and we're trying to be a place where a lot of different voices can be heard. And, sometimes that means we duck issues, right? Like that's part of the knowing when to weigh in and when not to. Yeah,
Chamber struggles with the same.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Do you think the problem with permit processing can be really solved at the local level, or whether it should be, is really a state concern? And we've seen over the years is a proliferation of the size of your EIRs that started out at 50 pages that are now 5,000 pages
Yeah.
for the same project.
Yeah.
And the question is, what can San Francisco do about that if there's not some kind of reform at the state level?
Yeah, so in terms of permission to build new buildings, probably the dumbest thing we do is we spend years and years studying whether a new building inside a city has negative environmental impacts. And the places with really good planning, like Oregon, do not do that. They have a law that says, as long as you're not building on farmland or on natural area, if you're building inside a city, that's good for the environment. So you should, that's where you should build. And where they have a lot of process is if you're gonna build on a green field. So California, because of the California Environmental Quality Act, kind of has that backwards. Now, that said, San Francisco is the worst in the state in terms of how it uses the California Environmental Quality Act. So we could make it 50% better on our own. I had some hopes that the governor might try to reform, it's called CEQA. When he was mayor of Oakland, he got a bill through the state legislature that exempted downtown Oakland from CEQA. So it's maybe the only time we're gonna have a governor who knows about this problem. It doesn't seem like that's where he's focused right now, but he's got a few more years, so maybe. We can't say that CEQA is the only permitting problem, but it's kind of the most glaring example.
We created the problem ourselves, and the chamber, I think, needs to work with SPUR and others, because of the lack of permit by right. Every other community in California, if you build to zoning code, you get a permit over the counter.
Yeah.
In New York City, you can build a 75-story building with an over-the-counter permit, because if that site is zoned for a 75-foot building, 75-story building.
Yeah.
San Francisco, everything is subject to appeal.
Yeah.
Therefore, every permit is CEQA reviewable.
Yeah.
That's got to change.
Right, so if you want to boil down, what's the housing reform agenda? It's what Jim just said. If you're proposing to build housing within the current zoning, you get to build it, period. If you're proposing housing that does not fit within the current zoning, then you can have years of process and self-immolation and whatever. Like that's I think that, if you really boil it down, that's what we could do as a city to make housing cost less.
But are people in this room who live, it doesn't have to be in San Francisco, just wherever you live, are you willing to give up the right to object to somebody building next door to you within allowable zone? I mean, that's the real question.
Everyone say yes.
Okay. All you have to do is see the filings at the Board of Appeals to know that a lot of San Franciscans don't believe it.
You guys, thank you very much.
Dave will probably be here a few more minutes, so if you want to ask him the question you wanted to ask about embarrassing Gabe or yourself. A couple things regarding schedules. In the back, we have information about the upcoming City Beat Breakfast,